Police cars revolving like big news out of the Department for Work and Pensions, and it's something that could impact thousands of people across the UK. The DWP has officially blocked over £1 billion worth of universal credit payments, leaving many claims under review and thousands of households uncertain about their financial future. This isn't just a small technical delay, we're talking about a massive freeze that could affect rent payments, bills, and everyday essentials for families who rely on universal credit to get by. Officials say the block is tied to a detailed investigation into potentially fraudulent or incorrect claims, but the decision has left many genuine claimants worried about when, or even if, their payments will resume. With living costs already at record highs and inflation squeezing budgets, this move couldn't have come at a more stressful time for people who depend on these benefits just to make ends meet. In this video, we'll break down exactly why £1 billion in payments has been stopped, who could be affected, how the review process works, and what this might mean for the future of universal credit. If you or someone you know relies on this support, you won't want to miss a single detail of this urgent update. Right pointing backhand index before we dive in, please hit that like button right now so this video can reach as many people as possible who need to hear this news. Your support helps spread the word and keeps our community informed. The Department for Work and Pensions' decision to block over £1 billion in universal credit payments is one of the most significant moves in recent years when it comes to welfare and benefits in the UK. The scale of this action is staggering. When you hear the figure, £1 billion, it's easy to think of it as just a number, but that number represents thousands upon thousands of individual claimants, households, and families who depend on that money for rent, food, energy, and basic survival. To put it into perspective, £1 billion could cover months of living costs for entire towns. So, the fact that this money has been frozen while claims are being reviewed has sent shockwaves across communities, with people now anxiously waiting to hear what comes next. According to official statements, the DWP insists that this block is necessary to protect the system from abuse, fraud, and error. They argue that a substantial amount of fraudulent claims had begun to slip through, threatening both the sustainability of universal credit and the fairness of the system for genuine claimants. But while the intent might be to safeguard public money, the immediate reality is that countless households now find themselves in limbo. Imagine being a parent who is told at the end of the month that the payment you depend on to feed your children, pay your heating bill, or keep a roof over your head might not arrive because your claim has been caught up in this £1 billion freeze. That's the reality thousands are facing right now, and it's no surprise that anxiety is growing rapidly. It's also worth understanding that this is not just a routine review. In the past, we've seen checks, audits, and adjustments, but nothing on this scale. The term block being used by the DWP indicates that the payments themselves are being held back until claims are either confirmed as legitimate or flagged as suspicious. That means for thousands of people, the lifeline they depend on each month is suddenly on hold. In practice, this has a domino effect. If one payment is delayed, rent could fall into arrears, utility companies may start chasing bills, and food budgets shrink overnight. The human impact is immediate and harsh, and that's why this story has been making headlines across the UK. Officials have said that the majority of claimants who are genuine will have their cases cleared quickly, but as anyone who has dealt with bureaucracy knows, quickly can be a relative term. For some, it may mean days, for others, it may mean weeks of uncertainty. And in that waiting period, households will still have to find ways to cover their costs, often with little to no savings to fall back on. Charities and support organisations are already warning of an increase in demand for food banks and emergency assistance if this situation drags on. They've pointed out that while it's important to prevent fraud, it's equally important not to punish genuine claimants in the process. Now, what triggered such a large-scale review? Reports suggest that the DWP's internal fraud detection systems flagged a significant rise in potentially suspicious claims. In particular, there have been concerns about organised criminal groups attempting to exploit loopholes in the universal credit application process. These groups are thought to have submitted large volumes of fraudulent claims, hoping to extract millions of pounds from the system before being caught. By blocking payments worth a staggering £1 billion, the DWP is essentially freezing the situation in place while they investigate which claims are genuine and which are fraudulent. From a policy standpoint, this sounds logical. From a human perspective, however, it means that thousands of innocent people are now caught in the crossfire. The DWP has also emphasized that they have a responsibility to taxpayers. Their argument is that every pound lost to fraud is a pound that cannot be spent on genuine claimants or public services. They stress that the welfare system must be protected from abuse if it is to remain sustainable in the long term. But many critics argue that the way this has been handled lacks transparency and compassion. They say the government should have had a plan in place to ensure that genuine claimants are not left struggling without income while investigations take place. After all, blocking £1 billion of payments in one stroke is not a small adjustment, it's a decision with nationwide consequences. For the claimants themselves, the process is confusing and stressful. Many have reported receiving letters or messages informing them that their claim is under review, but with little detail about what that actually means or how long the process will take. Some fear they are being unfairly accused of wrongdoing, while others are simply frustrated by the lack of clear communication. In times of financial uncertainty, clarity and reassurance are vital, yet for many, the information they've received so far raises more questions than answers. It's also important to consider the timing of all this. The UK is still facing the ripple effects of rising inflation, high energy costs, and a cost of living crisis that has left millions feeling stretched to their limits. In this climate, universal credit has become a critical safety net. Cutting off or delaying payments at a moment when families are already struggling magnifies the impact dramatically. Advocacy groups have said that even a delay of a week or two could push vulnerable households into debt spirals, eviction risks, and mental health crises. Some economic experts suggest that the DWP should have implemented a more targeted approach rather than a blanket block of £1 billion in payments. They argue that while fraud prevention is necessary, it should not come at the expense of leaving thousands of families in the lurch. For example, they propose releasing partial payments to claimants while reviews are carried out, or prioritizing investigations into high-risk cases rather than freezing such a massive sum all at once. These suggestions highlight the balancing act that must be maintained between protecting public funds and ensuring that vulnerable citizens are not left destitute. There's also a political dimension to this story. Welfare policies are often a hot topic in UK politics, and this decision by the DWP has sparked debates in Parliament and beyond. Supporters of the bloc say it's evidence of the government taking fraud seriously and protecting taxpayers' money. Critics, however, accuse the DWP of heavy-handedness and warn that the most vulnerable are being punished for the actions of criminals. Some MPs have called for urgent measures to ensure that genuine claimants are not left without support while the review is ongoing. The political fallout from this could be significant, particularly if stories continue to emerge of families going hungry or losing their homes because of delayed payments. For the public, the key concern remains straightforward: when will the money flow again, and who will be affected? The DWP has pledged to resolve the reviews as quickly as possible, but no specific timeframe has been guaranteed. That uncertainty is what makes the situation so unsettling. For households living paycheck to paycheck, or in this case payment to payment, even a few days of delay can mean the difference between stability and crisis. The emotional toll of not knowing when you'll receive the money you depend on is something that cannot be understated. Community organisations across the UK have begun stepping in, offering guidance to those caught in the freeze. Helplines are being overwhelmed with calls from anxious claimants wanting updates. Food banks are bracing for increased demand, and charities are urging the government to provide emergency assistance for those left without income during the review period. These organisations play a crucial role, but they are also stretched thin. They cannot possibly fill the gap left by such a massive block in payments. Looking ahead, the question is whether this event will lead to broader reforms in the universal credit system. Some believe it will prompt the government to tighten application procedures, introduce stricter verification processes, and invest more in fraud detection technology. While these steps might reduce the risk of fraud in the future, they may also make the process more burdensome for genuine claimants. Striking the right balance will be critical. It is clear that the DWP's move to block £1 billion in universal credit payments is about more than just numbers. It's about real people, real families, and real consequences. Behind every claim is a story: an elderly person trying to cover heating costs, a single parent buying food for their children, a disabled worker struggling to make ends meet. When payments are blocked, those stories are put on hold, often with painful outcomes. That is why this situation has captured so much public attention and why it will continue to dominate headlines until it is resolved. As investigations progress, claimants are being advised to remain patient and to cooperate fully with any requests for information. The DWP has said that those found to be making legitimate claims will have their payments reinstated and backdated, but until that happens, the uncertainty remains. Patience is easier said than done when bills are due and cupboards are empty. That is the harsh reality many are facing tonight. What's certain is that this story is far from over. The scale of the block, £1 billion, means that even small delays in resolving cases will have a ripple effect across communities. The outcome of this review will not only determine the fate of thousands of households but will also shape public trust in the universal credit system for years to come. If the process is handled well, it could reinforce confidence that fraud is being tackled and genuine claimants are protected. If handled poorly, it could deepen mistrust and leave vulnerable citizens feeling abandoned by the very system meant to support them. For now, all eyes remain on the Department for Work and Pensions. Claimants, charities, and the wider public are waiting for updates, hoping for swift resolutions, and demanding that compassion and fairness remain at the heart of the process. £1 billion is a huge sum, but behind that number are thousands of individual lives, each with its own struggles, needs, and hopes. The sooner clarity is provided and payments are restored to those who need them most, the sooner a sense of stability can return to communities across the UK.